There's a sneaky little dynamic that we often don't realize we're doing that can really stall our spiritual journey and keep us from being our best selves. In this episode, we discuss this dynamic and the consequences, why it tends to remain hidden, what to watch out for, and how to kick it to the curb so it doesn't keep holding you back. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part. The group frequency calibration meditation associated with this episode is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. If you know someone who could use help with this, please share this video with them. My name is Karen Cheong, and today in Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we're discussing the invisible dynamic that can crush your progress.
It's a tricky one, this one, right? And I know there's going to be lots of people watching it saying, no, I'm not like that. And then I would like to sort of say to those people, maybe we would like to break it down and have a wee look at it. Because I think we're in it more than we realize we're in it. So I would like to discuss the many faces of entitlement. What is it? What's underlying? What's underpinning it? Because I know we have cultural, which is the stuff you grew up with, and you have these assumptions and beliefs that you have a right to something.
Yep.
And then you have the personal ones where you get triggered into it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know what's going on at a frequency level, distortion level. And then ultimately, of course, why we want to resolve this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously there's a gift that we want to get to.
Yeah.
Right? But we'll save that bit to the end.
Okay. And there's also a challenge that if you don't do it, there's a ramification to it as well. And people don't understand there's a ramification to self-entitlement at all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, how about we discuss what it can look like in your general everyday?
Yeah.
You know, what self-entitlement can come across like. I mean, even if you don't see it in yourself, maybe you can begin recognizing it in other people when it's happening to you.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think we actually are more aware of it when people are doing it to us. Because as you said, it's when someone feels they have a right to something and they start demanding it. They don't really have a right to it, but they demand it as if they do.
Yeah.
And it can feel on like an energetic or frequency level like someone's trying to grab something from you that they don't really have a right to, but they insist that they do.
Okay, so just so that the audience can be aware of themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the faces of self-entitlement? Like, what does it look like when you're seeing or feeling when yourself in that place of self-entitlement?
Totally. So I was many years ago at a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. And for those of you who don't know Dr. Joe, he's incredible. He does a lot of stuff on creation manifestation, coherence, and a whole bunch of amazing things. And he's very well followed, meaning there are more and more people who know about him and are doing his work. So we were at this event that he was giving, and somebody in our group was telling the story of how he constantly is getting emails from people like demanding that they be allowed into his events for free. And, you know, he's made enough money, he'd be accused of being greedy, shouldn't you give this for free for everybody if you think it's so important, you know, all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of interesting to me to hear that because they're demanding that they be allowed in, and he doesn't have to grant it to them, you know, and it's not his job to make it accessible to everyone for free. But the way that they were acting in that and how she was saying, I mean, I can't quote exactly what the language was, but it was fairly abusive of what people were demanding from him because he'd quote unquote made it. So these are all indications of a demand for something because the person feels like they have a right to it when they don't. Because the person who can gift it to them is the one ultimately with the authority as to whether or not they want to give that of their free will.
Yeah.
And the other thing about entitlement is because there's that demand energy behind it, or that demand frequency, it's often masking, or it's what I would call like a shadow emotion, like a paler version of a stronger emotion that's not being recognized.
Yeah.
So oftentimes with self-entitlement, there's two things running. It's actually fear or anger, and or both sometimes. So one is the fear that you won't be heard, that you aren't important enough, that you're not worthy of receiving that thing. And then there's the additional anger of exactly those things, that is not being given to you, and you have a right to it, and you have to be really loud about it in order to receive it. So to me, that's the underpinning, like denser emotion underneath self-entitlement that's sort of like watered down a little bit. You know, it's like a paler version or like a shadow version of anger or fear. I'm
laughing because sometimes it's not so pale. And what I've found, I mean, I can talk for myself. I don't know how many times I've moved into self-entitlement, you know.
Yeah.
And I catch myself, thankfully, now, but I'm sure in the past I must have created some chaos with it. But this sense of feeling like now the people around me are obligated to give me this.
Yes.
Because I've done A, B, and C.
Yes.
Now you must give me this.
Yeah, totally.
And then, of course, you know, those people are in reaction.
Yeah.
And now the frequency that started off as me doing something nice for somebody.
Yeah.
And then maybe moving into a little bit too much of doing something nice for somebody. And then now we're in martyr.
Yeah.
And now you should be giving me something back.
Yeah.
Self-entitlement.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And now the nice thing has ended up a really gnarly, grumpy, bitchy thing. I wasn't sure whether to say it or not, but it's true.
Well, it's true, though. And it's really because it's the fear of not being seen, that thing. You're not being valued, not being worthy of those people's attention. And, you know, it's interesting for a lot of us who are people who feel like we give a lot and it's not being recognized. So it's when that giving is not recognized, I feel like that self-entitlement can really be there. And sometimes there's no giving. It's just, I have a right to this and you need to give it to me because of whoever I think I am in the world.
So now we're crossing into a territory that could be cultural, maybe. You know, I'm from this country and I can go wherever I want and I should be allowed to do this, this, and this.
Yeah. Yeah. So for example, like right now, as many of you know, we live in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico. And there are a large number of expats in Mexico and here specifically. And I've been in places where I've cringed because Americans, not just Americans, Canadians, other English-speaking countries will come in and demand service in English. I'm like, you're visiting this country. You are a guest in this country. You have no right, really, to demand that they serve you in a language that is not theirs. You are in their country, but the demand is there. That's self-entitlement. And so so personally, as somebody who is both American and Canadian, I'm always like, oh my God, there's not even a hello, how are you in the other language. It's just right into English. And it's interesting because that behavior that I've also seen in the States, especially with Mexican people who are often service providers, you know, like gardeners and cooks and this type of thing, because that's not always, because obviously they're very educated as well, but oftentimes in the States that is the role that they play. And so there's this power dynamic that can happen between Americans and Mexicans that they continue to perpetuate when they're here in a country that is not theirs. And there are a very large number of wealthy Mexicans and educated middle-class Mexicans. And it's funny to me because if they were in Europe, would they necessarily act the same way? Would the power dynamic be the same? And my feeling is no. So it's interesting how cultural entitlement can be there.
I've actually had the opposing experience where I have lived in Germany and been at a shop and been told, you live in Germany, you will speak German, and refused to serve me until I tried to speak German. But I've also had the other experience where I've had my culture and England and Ireland as well go over to Spain and come back. They've had a great holiday but moaned because they never spoke English.
Right.
What did you expect?
You're in Spain.
You're in their country. You know? Or they never served the same food.
Yes.
It was terrible. The food was terrible. You think they would have served.
Yes.
Like, why?
I've heard that a lot too. So it's funny how entitlement can show up. As you said, it can be cultural. We all have different rules of like what it is we have a right to within our cultures that we don't even really notice because they're so ingrained in like what it is that we feel we're entitled to.
That's something as well. Like I have literally heard people say, I am entitled.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, do you actually hear yourself?
Yeah.
You know, because part of it as well with the self-entitlement, I think the moment somebody moves into that resonance of self-entitlement, they lose the respect for the other person.
Yeah.
It's in that moment, you are no longer part of a collective. It's like you have separated yourself frequency resonance wise, and now there's no respect for the person or their culture, their lineage, nothing.
Yeah.
It's all about this here, right here.
Yeah.
And what your demands are.
Yes.
Wow. And to actually hear people say it out loud.
Yeah.
I am entitled
to this. Yeah, because again, that indignation, which is what people hear often, is that frequency resonance of anger, right? Right? Like that's the demand, it's the grab. And so from a frequency work perspective, there's a consequence to self-entitlement. It actually will lower your resonance, because what does it do? Like you just said, it separates you. It puts you in a false state of ego mind, you know, where it's like you are better than someone else, which is that imposition of a right, right? Therefore, I am better than you. So you're right now in your little self, in your ego mind, in the vibration of a diluted form of anger, which can escalate into anger itself, depending on what the demand is. And it just drops your resonance. I mean, it's just terrible. And it keeps you from experiencing the brilliance of life. Because if you're in the state of like, this is what is owed to me. I mean, are you having like an appreciation for life, the beauty of what is, you know, noticing the synchronicities and, you know, the collaboration between people? No, you are not.
and you won't even get it,
Yeah.
right? You may get what you feel entitled to in that moment, but will it be as glorious as it could have been if you had just allowed the connection with the other person and together have this synergetic, I can never say that word properly, ascension that you often talk about, right?
Yes, which is two people rising together.
Yeah, and it creates this marvelous creation manifestation process that we've talked about in the past as well.
Yeah.
So from like a frequency resonance level, I can only see the win-win from dropping the self-entitlement.
Yeah, exactly. Because as you say, the thing about self-entitlement as well is there's no surrender in it, right? Because it's a staking in a position. And so when you're not in that surrender in that moment, you're not in the flow state and in the state of collaboration and co-creation, which is synergetic ascension, as you've so beautifully said. So the thing is, when you decide that you want to hang on to self-entitlement, know that what you're doing is you're hanging on to projection from your ego mind. Right? You're just holding on to that self, like this false sense of I am better than, and therefore I have a right to. And that is all illusion. It's just your ego mind. And it really just can lead to a world of pain for yourself, not just for the person who has to receive it, unfortunately. Yeah. Because now what you're doing is you're causing a cascade of downward spiraling frequencies. And then nobody wants to help you. Does anyone really want to help the self-entitled person? No, they just want to chuck things at them, you know, because you're self-righteous bitch, you know what I mean? Really, it's what the person's thinking in their minds. They may not be saying it, but that's what they're feeling.
Oh yeah, no, I felt that exact thing. And I'm sure they've felt that on me as well. You know, I'm not saying I'm not guilty of this, but yeah, I really want to understand and hopefully get the message across through what you're saying that, you know, this is something that we need to actually really dig deep with, right?
Yeah.
Because I see it everywhere. Like you say, living here, especially in Mexico, I do see it a lot. And for me, it actually hurts to watch it because I can see that the person that's in it in that moment isn't actually expressing the truth of what's happening.
Yeah.
Or questioning where that came from.
Yeah.
Like you say, you know, this is this little S self has moved into action. Now, stop. Is this really me? You know, is this really what I believe?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the other person receiving it, of course, is now not wanting to help or somehow, depending on their triggers, now triggering their little things that are going to make them feel bad by the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, part of moving up in your frequency resonance has to do with being aware of your ripple effect. You have a ripple effect. The higher in resonance you become, the greater your ripple effect. So the more aware that you are of yourself, as you say, like of taking ownership in that moment. It's like, wow, I'm being extraordinarily demanding here and extremely self-righteous and extremely like anchored in my entitlement. Yeah. I'm vested in being right. All of these things entrench you in the ego mind. And it, like I said, creates this ripple effect. What do you want to create in the world? And if you can ask yourself that question, like, what do you want to perpetuate? Do you want to have everyone else spiral down? Or would you like to facilitate a spiraling upwards of resonance? So I think that's a good question to ask.
Wow. I mean, it's a huge topic. And I know we haven't got time to go deep in it. But what in the GFC, what's going to be offered in this GFC? How is this going to help us?
Yeah. So in the GFC, we're going to address clarity. So more awareness when you're in it. Because I think a lot of people aren't aware when you're in it. Mm-hmm. You just think, I'm entitled to this thing. I deserve to have it. It's my right.
Or it's my turn now.
Yes.
I've done this for you. Now you have to do this for me.
Exactly.
The poor person probably didn't even know that was part of the deal.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Like, I thought you were just going to do it for me. Oh, now you want me, I have to do this for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't even scheduled this in. I haven't got that. They feel under pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like the clarity and the awareness that when we move into that self-entitled state is important because it's kind of sneaky.
I was just going to say snake was a good word.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? It kind of like sneaks up on you. So that's what the GFC is going to be on.
Yeah, good. I can't wait. I'm probably going to have to do this a few times.
I think we all do. So for those of you who would like to do the work to become clearer when you are in the state of self-entitlement, which can cause your frequency resonance to drop and frequency resonance of those around you to drop, then I highly recommend listening to the GFC associated with this episode. And if you've liked this episode, hit the like button and share it with somebody who needs it. We're about to start the Group Frequency Calibration, or GFC, where we actually do the frequency work and where change is catalyzed. To get to the GFC, click on the square that'll appear to the right or the link in the description below. It's time to bring in a new experience, a new consciousness, and a new world. Let's rise together.